What's up, everyone? Gajewski here. Back again talking college basketball. It is Monday, February the 24th, last Monday before March. We have a shorter slate tonight. As usual, Mondays, we've got a couple big games up top and then a lot of low majors, mid majors. We'll get into all that. First, a quick look back to yesterday and some of the top storylines from Sunday. I think there were two big storylines coming out of the day, at least up top. First, UConn falls to St. John's. Pretty bad loss for them. UConn right now is looking like an 8 seed, falling down that seed line pretty far. And St. John's is climbing there all the way up to like the 2-3 line. St. John's shot the ball better yesterday, and UConn really couldn't get anything going. They were attacking McNeely routinely, and St. John's puts up 89 points. And that's what you're going to get when this team shoots even decently. We've seen them score well into the 70s when they're having some of their bad shooting nights. So St. John's is on a complete roll. They've got the Big East on watch right now as we head into tournament week coming up here pretty soon. Second, Purdue goes on the road. They lose to Indiana. Indiana's creeping closer and closer to that bubble line. There's a very good chance this is a tournament team. I think you could debate them right now. Obviously, there's games left to be played, and a few more wins would solidify them in the field. Purdue is almost in free fall right now. This was one of the Braden Smith cowardly games. For as good as he is, there's about 15, 20% of his games where he shows up. And I'm not talking about having a bad game. Like, he barely even tried. He's not taking shots out there or anything. And if your best player on a team that's limited is not taking shots, you're cooked. And they absolutely were. A few other storylines a little deeper in these conferences. In the Missouri Valley, Drake and Northern Iowa go to overtime. I had the over in this game. This is one I feel very bad about because it didn't even cover with overtime. You know, you take an over in this game, and these teams were shooting absolutely horrifically from the field. Just unbelievable how bad these teams played. You know, like, I'm traveling home yesterday, and I get home and I turn on this game. Drake, I think, is, you know, if Drake doesn't win their conference tournament, they could get an at-large. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, I don't want to see either of these teams get an at-large bid if this is how bad it's going to be. It's slow. It's inefficient. Now, these teams are much better shooting on the season, so there's a chance, like, it's just an overreaction for me, which I am very, very aware of. But that's at least something to note. There was some big news in the Horizon. We did not end up taking Milwaukee for good reason. They lost 72-59, but that's not the biggest story in the Horizon. There's still a logjam at the top. But Cleveland State got upset again, this time in overtime, to Oakland, who takes over sole possession of first in the Horizon. They still have games yet to be played this week, so a lot will be decided. But this Horizon League is awesome to watch down the stretch. I know it's not easy to actually view, but at least worth noting there. And on the bottom of this league, you know, like, teams are going to have to play Green Bay, who only lost by 4 points to Youngstown. Even the bottom of this league is dangerous, and there's no easy, safe game the rest of the way in the Horizon. It's going to be tough games here on out, making this must-see TV as we get to conference tournaments. Arizona State won, Creighton won, Rutgers won. Not really too much to be seen in the other conference games up top. Let's spin this forward. Before we get there, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. And if you would be willing, a like, subscribe, a comment, anything to help the video means a lot to me. Small channel, just getting started, trying to eventually make a few cents off this and not go broke on the way. If you've done any of those things, thank you. Even if you've just watched. Dedicating your attention to a video like this, even for a short amount of time, means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. All right. Weird slate. I guess the overarching theme of this slate is we have this elite game up top in Houston, Texas Tech. And normally I'm looking at mid-majors on Mondays. There's not the best mid-major matchups. We're going to talk about at least one, but, you know, in the ASUN, the best game is Eastern Kentucky taking on Jacksonville. That's a 3-5 matchup. There's some ties in there, but everyone's basically trailing Lipscomb and North Alabama. There's a gap between those teams and the next batch of teams, which is what we're highlighting here. In the Southland, the best game is Nichols and Texas A&M Corpus Christi. That's a 4-5 matchup, and that's because everyone's trailing McNeese, who almost certainly is going to win that conference. And then the SWAC, a bad conference overall. I think the best game is Bethune-Cookman, Alabama State. That's a battle between two teams tied for number 3. Everyone's trailing Southern there. So it's not the best crop of mid-majors. We'll focus mainly on the top today. Houston takes on Texas Tech. 1.5 point spread in favor of the road team Houston. 133 total. One big injury to monitor in the game. Texas Tech's Chance McMillian. He missed their game over the weekend. I think it was somewhat in anticipation of this, but that is honestly just a guess. We will not learn more likely throughout the day unless we get like a Rothstein tweet or something, but pregame warmups will tell us everything we need to know. This game is a rematch. February 1st, they played. Texas Tech won on the road in overtime, 82-81. It was an extremely even game where Texas Tech actually matched Houston in a lot of their areas of strength, rebounding, especially on the offensive end. Texas Tech didn't have Kevin Overton in that game. He's more of a rotational role player. And honestly, I think the game came down to Juwan Roberts and Joseph Tugler struggling offensively, which is something we will get into in just a little bit here. Resume-wise, Houston is 3-3 against the top 25. I think there's some holes to be poked in here. A lot of people want to just seed Houston on the one line. I can see it. There's a gap between, the top 3 ones and that 4th 1 seed, but they have a win over Kansas in double overtime. That was without KJ Adams. They just beat a severely shorthanded Iowa State. Those are 2 of their top 25 wins. And they did lose to San Diego State, number 46 in Vegas. It's just not the best Houston resume we've seen in recent years. It's still very good, though. They played a lot of middling to high-end teams, and they've taken care of business in most of those. They just kind of lack the high-end wins that an Auburn, a Florida, and a Duke have. Texas Tech is 2-3 against the top 25. Obviously, one of those wins was against Houston. They have some bad losses on the lower end, way worse than Houston. They lost to 83 St. Joseph, 77 UCF, and 84 TCU. These teams are actually pretty similar in how they're composed. Neither team's tall. We're talking between 220 and 254 in effective height. Both teams are still very good at rebounding despite their size limitations. 19 and 28 overall. They're both good on the offensive glass, top 40 there. A big surprise to me in the first matchup was how Texas Tech handled the offensive glass versus Houston. It was almost even. Offensively, Texas Tech has a slight edge. They're 17th in effective field goal percentage, 14th from 3. Houston's defense is a little weaker on the perimeter, so that 3-point shooting is something they could potentially exploit. Houston is 77th there. However, a lot of this hinges on McMillion's status. He's their best 3-point shooter at 45.5%. If he's out, their shooting takes a big hit. So that injury is very key in this game. With all that said, Houston is a good shooting team themselves. 77th in effective field goal, which is a funny number. More on that in a second. They're 3rd in 3-point percentage. 5 guys on this team are shooting over 39%. Uzan, Cryer, even going all the way down to rotational players like Malik Wilson. They have shooters for days on this team. Why are they 77th, you ask? Well, Juwan Roberts thinks he's Tim Duncan, and even Joseph Tugler takes too many shots. This team is 244th in interior scoring. I think the reason they lost the first game to Texas Tech is Juwan Roberts went 4-15 from the field. And that's not an outlier. He gets the ball at the elbow, and he takes these wild, crazy, inefficient hook shots that seldom go in. And you have shooters everywhere. It's the reason they almost lost to Arizona. Juwan Roberts and Tugler, amazing defenders, amazing. 3rd in interior defense in the country. Flat out taking too many shots on offense. Cannot be relying on Juwan Roberts and Tugler to make shots. Or you're going to lose, and they did to Texas Tech. Inside, I think it's fairly even. JT Toppin is absolutely dominant, but he'll be going up against Tugler and Juwan Roberts. For all the offensive questions, there's 0 on defense. These are 2 of the best defenders in the country, rim protectors. They're excellent on the interior. And the only thing is Texas Tech plays solid defense themselves. They're slightly behind Houston everywhere on the board, but it's slight. I think if you could guarantee me that McMillian missed this game, I would take Houston. We currently have him in, and when you put him in, this makes this about Houston -1. Right now, Texas Tech, you can get +1.5, so that's going to be where I lean. But it's just that it has to be a lean because we don't know McMillion's status. If he's out, I would change my tune on this game entirely. But right now, we're going to lean a fully healthy Texas Tech at home. It's just a volatile game. You don't know how stupid Roberts is going to be offensively, and we don't know what we're going to get out of McMillian if he plays at all. Next up, Big Ten, Michigan takes on Nebraska. This game is moving wildly. It's bounced all over the place. Right now, I'm seeing Pick'em, which was different from when I made the graphics. And the total in this game comes in at 151. Only injuries, Michigan, Sam Walters is a rotational player. Nebraska's Berkey. Young Tunsil, I still can't get his name right. I'm just going to call him Berkey from here on out. As far as those injuries go, Berkey did practice over the weekend. It looks like he's going to make his return from a multi-game absence, which is very important. Michigan's front court can be lethal, and they are lacking bodies in that area of the floor. So getting an extra player back would be big. Resume-wise, Michigan is 2-2 against the top 25. They have wins over Wisconsin and Purdue. They also have a pair of sub-50 losses. They did drop Minnesota, number 89, and Wake Forest, 68. They also lost their most recent game to Michigan State, where they were soundly beat across the board. When you look at that, it's not just, okay, they shot poorly. Basically, they're out-rebounded, lost the foul margin, lost the turnover margin, which is something that happens frequently. When you lose that many statistical categories, it looks like more of an effort thing than anything else. It's a tough game for Michigan. They'll look for the bounce back here. We mentioned their 2-2 record against the top 25. Well, Nebraska is 1-6, and they're barely hanging on to a top 25 win. They have a win over Illinois, who's a team in absolute free fall. Illinois checked in at 25 this morning. They're in danger of falling outside of that. Not to mention, Illinois didn't even have Ivisic in that game. So Nebraska's lone top 25 win is against a plummeting team without one of their best players. I don't know, man. 4 losses outside the top 50, 2 outside the top 70. Very, very tough body of work for Nebraska. And they need this win if they're going to hang on to their field hopes, at least. At least I think. Maybe they'll get in either way. Anyway, Michigan's playing the second tallest lineup in the country. They're 39th in rebounding. This is a big mismatch. And you might question this because Nebraska does come in 51st in effective height. They're just not effective at using it. They're 202nd in rebounding. Even with their size, like Berkey and Braxton Mee are excellent defenders. Zeros on offense. Absolute zeros. And Michigan's unique size with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden, not only are they 7 feet, but they're floor stretchers. They both shoot the three. Vlad is over 40% from three now. Wolf is over 36%. And even Stetter is getting some three-pointers off too. It's pretty crazy. So even on defense, when you have like Mia and Berkey, you're getting pulled around the floor in unique ways. And from there, those guys split the 5. Juwan Gary is your main 4-man. He's 6'6". That's not ideal against Michigan. You're ceding a half a foot when you're playing Juwan Gary at the 4, and that's the only place he's played. He hasn't even rotated to the 5 or the 3 in the last 5 games. Just strictly a 4-man. On top of that, Michigan is 11th in effective field goal percentage. They're 100 spots ahead of Nebraska in every shooting category, interior from 3, you name it. Trey Donaldson and Burnett are hitting over 40% of their three-pointers. We already mentioned all 3 of their big men can shoot. Michigan, that is. Nebraska only has 1 consistent guard. It's Bryce Williams. He's not the best shooter. He's not bad. 35% from 3. Kind of reliant on him getting downhill and towards the rim. That's tough against Michigan. So that makes this a tough matchup. And then who else is Nebraska playing? They don't have any other guards. They keep rotating a Sejan, who's more of a spot-up shooter. He does hit 40%, but not a consistent player. Last game, they went to Ulis and Griffiths, guys that weren't even a part of the rotation. I just don't know what you're getting from the Nebraska guards outside of Williams every game. It is a complete crapshoot. The one concern for Michigan I will highlight, turnovers, as usual, outside the top 300. Nebraska is 108th at turnovers forced. Kind of makes this a mild concern to me, but it's just that mild. There's enough advantages Michigan's direction where I'm still going to play the Wolverines. I took a +1.5. I missed the opening number of +2, but this has quickly steamed to a pick'em. And as you can see, we have Michigan favored in the game by 1 point. The pick'em line is completely fine if you're getting that at the airing of this video. I think this is one you can play through the -1. Money lines are fine. Michigan is where we will play this contest. ACC clash between North Carolina and Florida State as North Carolina tries to run the table to keep their tournament dreams alive. This is the toughest run, and it's probably the toughest game in that run. You had a bunch of teams outside the top 100, 5 of them, followed by Florida State at like 89, and then they closed with Duke. But North Carolina has done enough damage to themselves where they need to win this game. 2.5 point spread in favor of the Tar Heels on the road, totals 156. This game is just worth highlighting because North Carolina could make the tournament if they win out. So like every single game is kind of an elimination game for them. They're 0-8 against the top 25, but they do have a win over number 26, UCLA. Sometimes we just have these breaks in rankings, and UCLA honestly might be better than number 25 Illinois at this point. Who knows? But just want to highlight that. They do have 3 bad losses outside the top 50, dropped to number 90 Stanford, 68 Wake Forest, and 56 Pitt. Oh, that sounds bad. But when you look at Florida State, it gets worse. 0-5 against the top 25. Their best win is against that very Pitt team, who is one of the worst losses for North Carolina. Florida State has 3 top 100 wins all year. North Carolina has 5, so it's not that crazy. And probably the biggest takeaway you can gather from all this, the ACC is a mess. Resume-wise, or I guess I should say stylistically, Florida State is 7th in effective height. North Carolina is 213th. Seems like a big mismatch on paper, but North Carolina is the better rebounding team. They're 99th. Florida State is 184th. And Florida State actually ranks a little ahead of this team on the offensive glass. So just inefficient big man play from Florida State. Neither team can shoot, but man, Florida State really can't shoot. 174th in effective field goal, 309th from 3. Much has been made of the North Carolina weakness inside, but they're actually a little better defensively protecting the rim. So a lot of this for Florida State is going to come down to Jameer Watkins, their 6'7" 3-man, and center 6'11" Malik Ewan. Those are the 2 best offensive players on Florida State. They need to take advantage of their size because North Carolina plays one of the smallest lineups in this conference. On the North Carolina side, they are the better shooting team, not by that much. 68th in effective field goal, 189 from 3. But I still think there's room for this team to improve. Ian Jackson and Drake Powell are shooting at least 38% from 3. Drake Powell's playing a lot more of late. And RJ Davis has had one of the most disappointing seasons from a star player in college basketball that I can remember. It's kind of him and Cam Jones both having these horrible regressions negatively from 3. RJ Davis is down to 30.5% from 3. Big reason why they're in this position. But man, he's a much better shooter than that, at least historically. So if there's room for growth shooting-wise for either team, it has to be on the North Carolina side, in my opinion. But it's not going to be easy. He's not going to get clean looks. Florida State's big across the board, even at their guard position. For all Florida State lacks offensively, they are 61st in total defense. North Carolina 73rd. Florida State has the individual defensive advantage in every single major category. So it's kind of a tough matchup for both teams. Florida State's worse on offense. North Carolina's worse on defense. North Carolina's better on offense. Florida State's better on defense. Who actually wins out here? This is a hard road game for North Carolina, and it's one they have to win. We tentatively make this around the spread. There's the slightest of edges Florida State's direction. I think you could maybe play over. Pace is very good in this game. You just have to contend with the inefficient offensive play from both teams. I'll tentatively side with Florida State. I could see money coming in on North Carolina through the day. If that's the case, I'll have to consider the home team a little bit harder in this spot. And, teams want to spoil North Carolina's run. I would too. Let's change flows. Big 12 game. Kansas takes on Colorado. Not one we'd normally talk about other than it's a short slate on a Monday without a lot of the key mid-major matchups we've seen in previous weeks. Spread is 6.5 in favor of Kansas. The total in the game is 141. Only injury is Shaquille Moore for Kansas. He's a rotational player or a role player, so not the biggest thing to worry about. Kansas is 3-3 against the top 25, beat Michigan State, Duke, and Iowa State. They also have 3 bad losses, 51 West Virginia, 66 Kansas State, and 78 Utah. Those latter 2 pretty bad and pretty recent. Colorado has 4 top 100 wins all year. They beat UConn, Colorado State, UCF, and Baylor. The last 2 games, UCF and Baylor, the opponents were not at full strength. They've already taken 16 losses, but shockingly, only one of them has come out of the top 100 against Oklahoma State. But I'm not going to lie, this Colorado team is awful. Kansas has the advantage everywhere. The only place Colorado is ahead is in free throw percentage. The Jayhawks are elite defensively. They're top 16 in every major metric. Colorado has a lot of problems scoring. So this game comes down to me, what do we get out of Kansas offensively? Bill Self has had a hard time getting a hold of this program, especially of late. I don't know what he's doing with the rotation. I'm not sure he knows. And it's very hard to evaluate. I went in and dug into the minutes when we were doing minutes projections for every single player. And it's hard to figure out where they are because they've taken some losses. They've been in some blowouts on both ends, winning and losing. And then in their third most recent game against Utah, a loss, every one of their starters was in foul trouble except DeJuan Harris and Zeke Mayo. So I think we're going to see the same rotation consistently out of this team, but I can't guarantee that with how bad they've been. To break down their roster, you basically have one shooter in Zeke Mayo. He's good, 40% from three. DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams are effort guys, but they're severely limited on offense. I think Dickinson is underachieved. Now, the expectations have been sky high, so is underachieving there worth a lot? Like, he's still an excellent player. And then they don't have a fifth starter. In their most recent game, they tried to do the triple big thing with Flory Badunga. That failed. So I'm not sure what this team gives you, but the fact of the matter is they're not going to meet any resistance. Colorado's horrific. If you just look at efficiency among individual players, Colorado has 2 in the top 100, none higher than 76. It's a tough road spot. We saw Kansas struggle when they had to hit the road to elevation already this year. But man, this team is just way more talented than Colorado. It's been moving. Kansas, at 6.5 is open north of 7. I don't see any reason to play this right now. I don't think it's in danger of getting to like 8 or 9 or something. So why not just wait and see where this goes? And maybe you get a 6. I don't know. Kansas has been bad enough, and they're on the road where you might be able to get a number that's not currently available. So that's my current approach. Just going to wait and see where this goes with Kansas and then make a decision closer to tip-off if we want to. On that, if you'd like access to all the plays that we make throughout the day, like we make a lot when injuries come out. We just make some when lines move. We talked about player projections. Like we did minutes projections for Kansas, Colorado. Those go all the way down to the statistical categories, points, rebounds, assists. All that's available in the Discord, which is linked below. No long-term commitments. So you could even just jump in for March Madness or something when college basketball heats up. But just want to highlight that some of you may be interested in some more in-depth information, which is available below. Closing this out with the CAA, the best mid-major game of the night. UNC Wilmington takes on William and Mary. This is a battle of two teams tied for number 2 in the conference. They both have 11-4 conference records. But when you look at overall power rankings, Wilmington's actually the best team in this conference, even though Towson has the lead. Wilmington still looks like they're the most likely representative from the CAA. So this is a very big game. It's also a rematch. They played on January 20th. Wilmington won 85-74. They were at home in that game, but William and Mary didn't have Chase Lowe. Still, I'm not sure that makes a huge difference. We'll talk about some of the stylistics, and we saw them play out in this first game. Wilmington has a lot of size. They won through the size. They crushed William and Mary on the glass. They drew 26 fouls. It's a tough stylistic matchup for the home team. Resume-wise, both teams are 0-1 against the top 100. Wilmington got blown out by Kansas. William and Mary got blown out by VCU. The best wins for each of these teams: Wilmington beat number 146 App State. William and Mary beat number 161 Charleston. But little different when you get to the margins. Wilmington has 10 top 200 wins, 4 losses outside the top 200, 1 loss outside the top 300 to number 301 Howard. William and Mary has 5 wins against the top 200, 3 losses outside of that. But the problem is they have some lower end losses. They have 2 outside the top 300 to number 307 Old Dominion and number 317 NC Central. On the height, which was a huge factor in the first game, Wilmington's 109th in effective height. William and Mary is 256. That advantage predictably extends to the glass. Wilmington 40th in rebounding. William and Mary 243. And again, William and Mary severely out-rebounded in that first game. With that said, William and Mary does have some advantages. They're the better shooting team. They outrank Wilmington 59-130 in effective field goal percentage. But a lot of that comes from their interior scoring. Again, that was hugely affected in the first game where they only managed to shoot 41% from 2. William and Mary is 152nd from 3. That is where Wilmington is weakest on defense. So if there's an advantage, it's potentially from 3. Don't love that they're kind of a middle-of-the-pack three-point shooting team. They're taking a ton of them. They shoot the 3rd most threes in the entire country. So it kind of is a little volatile in this game, not to mention Noah Collier has been injured for William & Mary. Wilmington has a clean bill of health. That's something to monitor. Say it's tough stylistically. And then again, Wilmington, not the best scoring team. We mentioned the gap in shooting. Wilmington knows their weakness. They're not taking a lot of threes, and they're 114th in interior scoring. That's where they do most of their damage. It's a huge mismatch inside scoring-wise, too. William & Mary is outside the top 300 in interior defense with the size they lack. Just pretty big mismatch in favor of Wilmington. Turnover margin favors Wilmington. They force more turnovers. They turn the ball over less themselves. I currently left Collier in for the projection. That's why you see this within the spread. I think the market is assuming he's missing this game. So right now that sort of lends itself to the Wilmington side, which is where I lead. I think you could also potentially play an over. We show some value on that. I am not going to take anything until we get news for sure on injury stuff out of this game. It's not the best reporting, so it's not the most surprising when random guys pop up with injuries. With that said, this is one of the biggest games in this conference as these teams chase Towson to finish this conference. But we will tentatively lead Wilmington and see where the injuries shake out pregame. I don't have a lot of bets today. For right now, it's mainly just Michigan. It's a short slate, of course, Monday night, and we'll be gearing up for a lot on Tuesday. But we'll see where things go throughout the day. A couple other spots we'll be eyeing up. Discord will have it all, and I'll be available on Twitter. I'm home now, so we can do some more stuff. Anyway, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great night enjoying the high-profile action. Until tomorrow, good luck, everyone.